Matthew Moran. I work for Butterfield Realty. Paul is here, the owner, Paul Galero, and Ray Sullivan is our architect, so he'll be speaking about the project. And so we're here to go through the process so ultimately we can get to this certificate of appropriateness. And while we're going to be talking about the designs tonight, just to walk you through, just so you're familiar, and we can go to each building as Ray is looking at the architecture, just whoever may not be familiar with it, just to walk you through it one more time. So on Paulding Avenue, there's going to be 3 single-family homes that are here. They are on a separate building lots. So there's going to be lots 1, 2, 3, and then the remaining parcel is lot 4. These 3 houses are facing Paulding, and then the site steps to buildings 4, 5, and 6. These are going to house senior citizen housing, senior resident housing. The structure here in the middle, we're calling it the link. We need to set aside space for the resident community center, not to be confused with, a senior center for the town. This is something that's in the code that we have to set aside here. So
is the link what's considered 5?
it's between 5 and 6. What's happened is 4 and 5 was here. We kind of were separating them, calling them 4 and 5 because we had a jog between the 2 buildings. But really, it's still one building. It's one building. It's just a carryover from
The previous
Well,
iteration?
yeah, right.
So 5 isn't the link. The link is between 4, 5,
Right, 4, 5.
comma, and 6.
Right. And we envision this as a single story. These will be 2.5, and this would be single story, and then building 6 would be, again, this is all senior housing.
6 is 2.5 also.
Mhm.
2.5.
Right. And then it steps again now to building 3, which is a larger building, and again, it'll house senior citizens. I wanted to go back and point out the parking, a lot of parking is under the building. So this way we could remove some of the pavement on site. And from building 3, we step down again. This is the existing Leahy Pavilion that everybody's familiar with. That's going to remain. And in the front here, buildings 1 and 2. 1 is going to be a municipal office type building, possibly with some retail on the ground level. And this is another retail / office building, again with some retail that's permitted only on the ground level. And there's a road that comes through and loops in and goes back out. And there's another road that comes through, loops in and goes out. And a link of parking in the middle here. The Gateway Park is going to stay. And this plan here is actually something that was just recently developed. It's more advanced than what you have. We have submissions going into the planning board concurrently. And so this shows some of the landscape architect features that have been developed. And so you kind of see the orientation, and Ray Sullivan, maybe want to come up and start talking about the architecture.
Can I ask a site plan question
Sure.
first? What's going on up here? Oh, bioretention.
Yeah. Same thing here. There'll be some type of flat paver area. You'll step down to another paver area, and then there's some type of vegetation. And this was the original Butterfield Square, the concept of, yes. And then over here, again, some type of bioretention, so that we're meeting certain goals set by the planning board. And some meadow plantings, and then, to be determined. I think, Paul, you were saying that you were going to have the local conservancy involved with
The Garden Conservancy,
garden.
we're looking to have them work with us on this.
Okay. So, we'll do it.
Yeah, I'll just use that. I can use it.
In terms
Yeah.
of the site plan, do you have any
grading elements that would require retaining walls or anything like that?
Yes, there is a grading plan. We don't have it here right now. The landscape architect started to pick up some of the walls here, another one here at the edge of this Leahy parking area, and
Along the left
just
side.
oh yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, over here, just over here.
Do we have a sense of height? That's a pretty significant.
Yeah, over
slope
here,
there.
it's gonna go from 0, where it begins,
Uh-huh.
to 4 or 5 feet in the center at the peak, and then back down to 0. And we'll have more information on that probably the next time we see you.
But I think we had a drawing with topography on it in the past.
Yeah, that was what was developed at the moment, and we have the final engineer drawings going in right now, actually, to the town. So
So this is an outdated
it's
one.
yeah, it's been tweaked since that.
Okay, so modifications made sense. And where was the first, I'm sorry, I missed it, I had my head down. I
Yeah.
saw the retaining wall that you showed along the edge of the parking lot at Leahy. Where's the first one? That one?
There's one just
Yeah.
here. Again, I'm gonna say it's,
Oh, it
3 feet, something like that. And I don't,
Okay, that's
there's
something
that one, and I don't see any others on
Yeah,
this
that's
plan
it.
at this
Oh,
time.
that's it. Okay. Thanks.
Just a general note, at the senior buildings, we're gonna keep the refuse containers inside. They have a neat little system now where you can compact, and it kind of self-compacts and it knows, and so we ended up with just a couple of outdoor units outside building 1 and 2. And, we're starting to show some details here. But again, we'll get to that on the final engineer drawings. I think mainly Ray's here to give you a flavor of the buildings.
Just a quick side note, it's hard to read grading plans, and I read them all the time, so we will three-dimensionalize those in building models, so you'll see exactly kind of how that plaza relates to the building, and, you'll see the wall, you'll see the landscaping. So, just by way of general introduction, my name's Ray Sullivan of the Sullivan Architectural Group. We've been fortunate enough to do a lot of, multifamily projects. A recent one that's nearby, Osling's not too far away, which is a 170-unit project for Avalon. But if you know that project, the center of the project is the old Kane House, which is in excess of 100 years old, and that got renovated to become the amenity center, and there was a fitness center added on, in the back, and we had to use some of the same materials on the additions to amenity area as well as on some of the buildings, and we think it blended very well. But we do we do a lot of we've got some beautiful projects down in the Mamaroneck area. We've got a beautiful old traditional almost Spanish style that's going up on 95 in Larchmont now, and we've recently won some awards in projects in Brookfield, Connecticut, and Norwalk, Connecticut. So if you need some background data, I'd be happy to provide. So initially we're looking at these structures. They're all 2.5-story structures. And I think the initial planner, whoever he was, did a great job, because these first 2 buildings aren't that big, and when you have those 2 buildings and you have this this large, what's going to be a park on the end, I think it provides a great kind of soft front, as opposed to kind of a more dense singular building or larger building. So I think the buildings could have been spread out, but providing the park and breaking the buildings up, I think the initial site planning went very well. The first 2 buildings, buildings 1 and 2, they're 2.5 stories. They'll have retail on the ground floor, and then they'll have office on the second and the half story, up in the roof. And so we looked at, well, yeah, I have to twist. So for instance, we looked at those buildings and we said, these buildings are about 60 by 100, and we've pushed and pulled them a little bit to project some gables and have some recesses so they wouldn't be just a giant rectangle. And so, I mean, gee, we looked at it, gee, does it want to be shingle style? Does it want to be kind of, straight to, traditional? Is it all brick and is it a little bit more federal? Is it more of a, farmhouse style? So, but I think the building as it began to be conceptualized, had some nice lines to it, and it's got the ability to vary from one style to the other.
So 1 and 2 would be the same?
They're going to be similar. There'll be some slight differences. So
Are they the same size?
they are the same size.
Same footprint?
Yes. So again, what I was saying, like for instance, the building that's going to have the the beautiful terraced plaza in front, we'll actually draw that three-dimensionally in here so you can see it, but that's just now being developed. But but I think that we've got this ground floor retail area which we envision as all brick, divided light windows, large windows with transoms. The scale will get broken up with some columns, and there'll be minor differences between the two buildings, whether or not we've got a kind of a flat portico entryway, with a railing on top, or whether or not we have a sloped roof on the second building. A shed dormer is going to be replaced by two gable dormers, on the other building. So the buildings will be very similar, but they will have some slight differences. So we've got this building that's 60 feet wide, and we like the idea of creating some very attractive gables on the side that lets the roof, that's in between. It's going to house a lot of that half story. Let it come up, but by creating the gables on the side, we're able to give it a steeper pitch than it normally would. And I think the steeper roofs are more attractive. And once you do the steeper roofs, it's easier to do reverse gables off of that and begin to break it down. So we've got a ground floor retail that is mostly glass. We're looking at what could be 4 users, 2 on each side, and you'd be able to enter on the ground floor, go in, take an elevator up to the to the office area, on the upper 2 levels.
Wait, just so that I understand, are you showing us sort of the creative process which led you to this, or are these options things that are still on the table for you?
I'm showing the process we went through to get to here.
Okay.
But so as you bring it up, I would love to get some direction from you, because obviously it's an important site for the town. And I think this shows that within the same building footprint, we can mold the architecture to a certain look without drastically changing the footprint or the square footage of the building. And so we went with kind of a combination of these two schemes, where we've got really what we envision a brick base, a lot of glass, transom windows, heavy banding, for signage, and then we transition up to a clapboard sided front elevation, all with traditional double hung windows. We're thinking it's going to be a divided light window, and so I'd love to have your input on what you think about this and details that you think are critical, whether or not it's the shutter and the bracket that holds the shutter, or whether or not you're more interested in colors or brackets up in the fascia. But proportionately, we think we've got a good product. When we model this with the landscaping that goes in front, you know, when you approach it from the west and you see that, you know, that this building sit in front of that terrace, you know, I think it's gonna be, you know, it's gonna be beautiful. And also, I don't really think, once you see it three-dimensionally, kind of the whole model, it won't really, I don't think it's that big, because, you know, these two buildings are actually buried into the hillsides. They're only a story and a half tall from the other side.
So the trees that we're seeing behind in the drawing, that look to be to the rear of the,
No,
That's
these
just the rendering?
these are all in front. What begins to happen, yeah, so if you see that line there, that's a retaining wall at the back of the building that slopes up to here. So there's a retaining wall, there's a, you know, kind of a grade, and the ground line in the back is up there.
okay, on the lower one, it looks as if the trunk comes down in front of that wall.
Yeah, the trunk does come down in front of the wall.
Oh, I see, and then the retaining wall
There's a retaining wall,
behind
then a
is
slope
what goes
up
up to
behind,
that,
yeah.
to that Leahy
Yeah.
parking lot.
Yes.
Is
So,
that an accurate sense of scale of that retaining wall up to that lot?
yes, but the retaining wall's actually not that tall. It's, you know,
Is
the
it
retaining
three
wall's
feet, right?
been slid forward so that we can grade up to it, have the wall, and then grade up to the parking lot. So, and the, you know, as Matt said, the landscape plans are just developing now, but you know, he's a very talented designer and you know, does a great job, you know, breaking that up, and as that develops, we'll model it more exactly. What, you know, we didn't want to come here saying, gee, this is our product. We wanted to come here and say, we think we've got some, you know, we think we've got some good architecture started, and we'd love your input to mold that and the vision that, you know, that you see it as well.
Now, this seems to show building 1, where the building is parallel to the roadway and the sidewalk. And what is the depth between that sidewalk and the building?
So in building 1 is the second building up. So it's really, you know, it's almost on the sidewalk. There's a short distance to the.
Because this seems to be,
I think this is 30, yeah, 30. So from the existing sidewalk, I'll just highlight it. This is the sidewalk. So we have about 16 feet.
15, 16 feet.
Yeah.
So my assumption is that we're losing the trees all the way around the site, right?
There are the trees that are along the road, anything that's surviving right now, we're gonna keep. Is it these trees? They lightly show up on the plan here, the large trees.
What'd you say?
Said there was not many to keep.
Yeah, I think it's,
I mean, the ones over here are pretty dead.
Yeah.
For sure.
Around the corner on the
yeah,
side.
one of the two was recommended to come down,
Yeah.
so.
I wasn't even sure they were on your property. I thought they were
Some of
behind.
I thought they were highways.
They're right
might
on
be
the
alive,
right of
but they're
way.
pretty damaged.
Yeah.
While we're talking about that, I mean, the bioretentions were discussed earlier. Are you familiar with the bioretention basins?
Well, I had thought that, I guess it's just that it's changed. In earlier discussions, there was some talk about a pond or something happening up in the park area, but maybe that shifted down to that bioretention area. Am I remembering something completely
Well,
crazy?
they may have been discussing, the site has very good soils, and so what they're gonna do is, all the water is gonna be contained on site, stormwater runoff. And not just, I think, you know, it says technically you can't add any additional new runoff, but we're actually gonna not only, we're not gonna do that, but we're also gonna capture all what used to come off the site too, which is permissible. So, and in an effort to do that, you end up putting in underground detention systems. So
That's
maybe what you
it,
heard
yeah.
was, so that'll be hidden under the park.
And this, where's the site plan go? This is the
Well,
old
yeah.
one though. Where's the new one that you? if I-
Yeah, and so what we did though, before the water goes in there, we're gonna take a certain amount of it to go through this bioretention basin. It's something they're looking for. It's not actually something that we even need to do, but we're just adding it as a feature, as a vegetated,
Like a garden area.
yeah, it's like a wet
That's
garden
interesting
area.
because that's where the planned gardens were for the hospital,
Mhm.
on that side. Did you do that on purpose, or did it just end up that way?
It just ended up that way.
No, so that's the, not
Nice
the
little
only
bit of symmetry.
bioretention basin, there's the other one
Yes.
that's there.
And what happened is the planning board is looking for some green technologies from us, all throughout the site. We're gonna look at that in the buildings, but we're also, as far as the site is concerned, we don't need to add these planting areas, but it's more environmentally friendly. It'll actually take the first flush of drainage, so you've got landscaping that will actually cleanse the water naturally, and will hold the first flush before it kind of gets into this concrete basin down below. So
So where's the basin at? Because I thought you were talking about basin up here.
no, there's a large kind of basin underneath that, and a basin down here. I think there's a third basin as well.
It's actually,
So it shifts, the whole thing shifts down into
Down,
this
yes,
area.
yes, yeah. Now, I think Paul has some thoughts on how the park's gonna get designed, and everybody's gonna get involved, but that ends up being, even though it's serving the purpose of drainage, it's being done kind of green, and it's a very attractive solution, in the long run as well.
Well, especially to offset all of the asphalt that's being added, right? But you've got some balance to the impermeable.
So you have underground parking under buildings 4, 5, and 6.
And
Is the-
here and under here,
And what number is that, 3?
3.
Okay. Is there, 1 and 2 don't have any underground parking?
No, so 1 and 2 are actually built into the hillside, so there's no back to the first floor of the retail area. It's actually a basement wall in the back of the retail area, because it's a story up above. So, you drive, kind of up and walk onto the second floor here, and here.
And we're no longer looking at a loading dock on one?
no, the post office, that really was for them.
Mm-hmm.
And they said that if they came here, it's really gonna be a retail outlet only now.
So if I could, just kind of run through some things, and then
Right.
you could ask me to, go back or forward or whatever. So, this is a sketch of, I call it Building 4. I mean, I think originally it's called Buildings 4, 5, and 6, besides the community center, but it's really a building. And certainly, this section is, but, so the, at this building, we've got kind of a high point, and it slopes down. The access to the parking on this building is down below this level, underneath. The building will be, a little bit taller, here up in this main section. This is just a sketch we're playing with, and that's that amenity area in between. So this, this ground level will hold a club room, a cafe area, a fitness, yoga area, business center or library, whatever you want to call it. But we're taking that area, we're dropping that down to kind of help the scale of the building. And then the second floor that's used will also come out of the roof. So there are 2 units up here, but those plate heights are going to start lower on the floor. They won't be full plate heights.
So the
So
upper
it's
image
not
is that.
it's not
I'm sorry.
a high ceiling in that section, the 1-story section.
This
really
is
a-
actually 2 stories.
It's actually 2 stories.
It's 2 stories. There's a ground level. The second floor above it, the walls on the perimeter, will start short, kind of where I am, and then slope up as opposed to starting 9 feet in the air. And so the dormers will break the plane of the fascia coming down, and we'll get the sense of that being really what it looks like is a building that's a story and a half, from the street, as opposed to a 2.5-story building.
And on the top, we're standing sort of up toward the retention, well, up toward the park, right, and looking south. Well, this is the south corner, right? Looking
No,
west.
This view is, you're kind of here.
The opposite way
looking
that I was
down.
thinking.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we think, again, the landscaping is just developing, as is the site lighting. And so, we're pretty excited that we can get kind of what looks like, what's going to look like a a nice residential street by the time we add all the landscaping, the paving treatments, the additional treatments, on the building, the site lighting. In this area, the parking is parallel, just like it is on the street. So it's going to look and feel, like a community, street in between these residential buildings. It's not going to look like a multifamily where there's double rows of parking and head-on parking into the building.
Right,
It's all
and we've narrowed the roads
Yeah.
so that we're one-way traffic on that particular section of the street.
so, but this like all the other buildings, there's a half story, and so the half story, most of the glass in the half story is going to be developed in kind of reverse gables. We're going to have some pockets where we actually cut the roof out so that the residents up on that half story, can actually have a walkout deck. But again, we're envisioning some very traditional lines, attractive gable roofs. We've got the double hung windows, heavy trims, and again would kind of love your feedback on the elements that you see as important to carry the vision of this through. But again, I mean this part when we model it with the other building, I think we're pretty excited. I think it's going to look kind of cool because it's going to be almost like an internal street. Quite small residential scale. In nature. It's tough when you have to park right up against the building. The headlights go in. This is great. There's very little parking on the street. It's most of it's in the ground.
Have you had, this is not our issue, this is just a matter of curiosity for me. Do you have parallel park, you've done other senior housing.
Yes.
How does parallel parking go over with,
Well, the majority,
Senior housing.
most of that parking is is probably for
guests?
for guests. There's a higher than a 1-to-1 ratio of underground parking, for all the units in buildings, 3, 4, and 5, and in building 3.
Has no bearing on our review, I
Yeah.
was just wondering.
Yeah, but we did consider it's a.
As a senior
How do you
citizen.
do with
As
parallel
a senior
parking?
citizen, I think parallel parking is fine, yeah.
Plus, everybody drives their cars, or they park themselves now. And
Yeah.
Cindy knows that,
Something
right?
like that.
Yeah,
That's how it
I've never
works
seen
here in
one
Cold
work, but I
Spring.
saw the ad.
But underneath, we did make the parking wider. We made them basically all handicap accessible size from underneath the building.
This is building number 3. It's the larger building. I think it's well positioned because it's actually in the center of the. Yeah, it's in the center of the development. So it's actually kind of surrounded by smaller buildings. But the same concept applies where we've got 2.5 stories. There will be a number of reverse gable and roof elements, dormers, be they gables or sheds, cupolas, the elements you'll find in a typical traditional building, and I think when also developed further and presented in shade and shadow, you'll see that there's actually a lot of movement on the front of the building. So every unit gets an exterior space. So that area is recessed, that
An
area is
exterior
recessed.
space meaning a balcony or a
Balcony or
recessed-
terrace, wherever, depending on what level
So
they're
there
at.
is some personal private space for each unit,
Every unit has it,
on all of the buildings?
all of those, every single unit. I mean, that's important. I mean, I think, it's not gonna be, it's not gonna be a 16 by 16 area, but you can go out there with a couple of chairs and my wife would kick me out and, have your cigar outside or whatever, I mean, but there's a place to go to, and everyone will have it. So when you when you see it in shade and shadow, again, that's recessed, that's recessed, that's recessed, that's recessed, and so these railings will project, and so you'll see recesses, you'll see projections, and you'll actually see a fair amount of activity on what could be a flat wall. We still have to be, efficient how we put it together. There are a number of units in that building, but we think we've started a vocabulary that will work.
The units are all single-story units, right? There's no
they're all
upstairs,
single-story
downstairs?
units, yes.
So the downstairs ones, these look like French doors that are opening out into
Mhm.
a lawn area?
Yes. And then there's a landscape plan that's developing too, so there'll be, shrubs, around their terrace area, so when they go out, there'll be some definition, some protection to that. And then, again, it's the area out front of this that has the parallel parking, and so, there won't be, direct headlights in.
But on the other side of the building, it faces a parking lot.
But that doesn't have a ground floor terrace, those are decks that are elevated up above that. They'll be
Okay.
looking at the beautiful buildings out in front of them.
Right, you're looking at the roof of the Lady Pavilion. Well, so that is a slope here that the first floor would have decks, that would be somewhat elevated, or what?
Oh, yeah, no, the first floor deck is much like this second floor deck here. It's so what happens is that the units have a recess in it, so it could be let's just say the living room is recessed 5 feet. The deck may project out another 3 feet, and so we're framing a elevated exterior space for every single unit. So the ones on the back are just being projected just like these here on the front.
And the back is,
You don't
no,
have
we were
back
looking at
elevations.
4 before, you
just
don't
front
have that
elevations
elevation.
for
Yeah,
the
we're just
floor.
we're developing we're developing the back. There's the masonry wall goes down behind. The garage doors are going to be there, and we're just breaking up the brick elevation of that lower level
Is Leahy being modified in any way?
slightly, right?
Yeah, just the breezeway is going, and there's going to be a door, an entrance there.
But otherwise, the roof stays the same, and hopefully it'll be,
Well, you don't own
Re-roofed.
that building anyway.
right.
Yes.
You
I
don't.
own that.
You do own it.
It's ground leased to Hudson Valley Hospital.
Well, I thought the building was owned by Hudson Valley Hospital and you own the land.
No.
You own the building.
They have to maintain the building and everything, but I own the ground and the ground lease. And they own they lease the building. They have a 49-year lease on the
I know
building.
there's a for-profit subsidiary that they have that owns the building or something like that, isn't that the case?
That's correct.
Okay.
So in general, we have these. Again, we played with shapes that could take different styles. We're focusing in on a very I was going to say simple traditional, but it's it's a more of a strict traditional. The accent bases that we use, whether or not it's the back side of this building where the parking garage is, or the base of the retail buildings, will be brick. It makes sense with the brick buildings that are there. And then we'd be using clapboard siding, heavy trims.
Which other brick building? Leahy's the only brick building that remains.
Right, that's the
That's the one.
yeah. I mean that's the site has a history of brick with the other building.
Can you take us through the site and just talk about the aesthetic approach that you're taking for each of the buildings and why you think that's a good idea in those locations? I mean, just my concern is that you've got a lot of different influences, and basically what we're looking at is taking this development and sort of fitting it in a context. And so I was just wondering if you had some, how you approached it. What did these two buildings relate to as opposed to this building, as opposed to these three, and so on.
Well, the buildings are a little bit set in terms of there's a footprint and a size, and they're 2.5-story buildings. So I think it's important to develop a consistency. You ever used to see those townhouses that would go up, and this one was yellow, and this one was red brick, and then this was a blue side. It's just So I think there needs to be a consistency. If you've ever been to any, the most beautiful place I've ever been to on earth is some of the Italian hill towns, and they're using all the same materials, but there's a lot of grade change and there's a lot of site activity. So I think there needs to be some consistency to the volumes and the shapes that you're using. They shouldn't all be exactly the same. There should be some slight identity changes. And then, I think fortunately here, once you see the fully developed, landscape plan, it's the grade change in the activity of walking up a story or down a story, going over to the meadow on the other side where the bioretention basin is. That's a great exterior space to be. And when you turn and look back, except for the backside of this building, which is the tallest piece of it, really everything's 2.5 stories. I think a consistent color. That there needs to be accents. There needs to be some slight individuality, I think, to it. But I think there's a consistency to proportion and shape that needs to carry through, and the landscape and the grade change is going to take care of a lot of it's going to provide a lot of the interest because of the grade changes.
Can you speak to the choice for cupolas on this structure? It's not a very Cold Spring element, and I wonder why you decided to introduce it here.
Which one?
All of them.
Okay. Well, these two were introduced just playfully. Gee, we want to, is the roof too long? Do we want to break the, do we want an element on the roof? That was the only thing, I was thinking there. That they're, I mean, that is a more traditional shape and could have some use to it.
I'll tell you, there are two responses I have to the cupolas.
Hmm?
One is that I think it gives this building a very barn-like
Mhm.
appearance, but also they're not design features. They're not elements that we see around the village.
Yeah,
other than, I'm trying to think if we have. There is on Fair Street. There's a barn that has a cupola.
Well, you have a cupola at the top of the Presbyterian Church and Academy. Well, it's sort of more like
an
a
institutional
stunted
building,
steeple.
Yeah.
And yeah, you have a barn on Fair Street that has something like a cupola, which is
But it's clearly an accessory building and not a primary structure.
Yeah, no,
And
that's a good point.
I don't feel strongly
And
about them one way or the other, but they strike me as out of place in your overall scheme and also out of place for the village.
Yeah.
yeah. I mean,
What-
they may be traditional, but I don't think they're traditional here.
Not here.
Yeah, okay, and I appreciate that, because that's just some of the feedback we'd love to have, because, I'd love to be able to come back to you and say, you were talking about this proportion or that look, or, I'd like to work on that, but I'd like to understand what's important to you.
I do understand the desire to break up the roof line,
Mhm.
because that's number 3, right?
Yeah, that was number 3.
Yeah, I mean, it's at the center of the site. It's a large rectangle. It's got a lot. That is a very dense building. It doesn't have the same shape interest as some of the others do. So I get the motivation for it, but it does feel out of that element feels out of character to me.
Well, I just want to make sure that you get to present everything that you want to present. I mean, do you want to sort of start the exchange?
Yeah, yes, please.
Okay. So, do you have anything else that you want to?
I have some thoughts, but I've been talking, so let somebody else.
Okay. How are you looking at your materials palette, and where are you?
Before, can I just talk about something? And I just want to throw this out because, as well as for the other board members, it just sort of overall approach to the site. I'm concerned about this. This is the white elephant, the Leahy development, because all of these structures that you're showing, and I understand that you're trying to develop some consistency, which if you look across the street, there you have consistency. But you have a lot of other influences over the different styles that you have throughout the site, and I think that trying to maintain that consistency and yet respect the other things that you have. You've got a very 50s shopping center right across the street. You've got a Leahy Pavilion, which is probably a 60s building. I forget.
80s, 83.
Okay, so a modern building, and very modern. And then you have along Paulding Avenue, you have a bunch of nice old 1800s single-family residences. And I think that part of the overall site planning was trying to address some of this. For example, these 3 houses, I think, are a nice complement to the houses that you have on the other side. So I think that when you're looking at this, perhaps the inspiration or the look that you're trying to achieve should probably be found in those houses there. With the Leahy Pavilion, that's the one part which is really,
On building number 3, the back side of it, it's actually gonna be almost higher than the roof, because it's gotta step down there
Of
someplace on
Leahy?
the elevation. I mean, you're gonna look up the hill, you're gonna see the back side of building number 3 over everything.
Three, just to give you, the
It's
grade
like
is
looking
getting
at the
cut,
back of the
so that
hospital now, that's
Yeah.
what I'm saying.
Right,
It's gonna be at that elevation and stuff.
the new building 3, the entry to their underground parking, that grade's all getting cut, so that basement level is gonna line up with the Leahy Pavilion. I know there's a big slope there now.
It's a
But
huge
they're going
grade
up
change.
to
But
an
the
house.
basement
Right.
level will line up with what on the Leahy
The
Pavilion?
basement, the drive-in parking garage is the same elevation as Leahy Pavilion's floor.
That whole hillside gets cut. I mean, right now it's
That
like
gets-
this, if you've ever
Okay.
walked
Right
up
now,
that
the ba-
hill.
right
The
now-
whole thing gets ripped down?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're going down to what is now the floor of the basement of the hospital level?
Yes.
Okay.
And so, I would say, just roughly, the first floor elevation would be, I don't know, somewhere around the height of the roof of Leahy Pavilion.
That's what I'm
Say that
saying.
one more
It's
time,
gonna be
that-
very, this is the main thing you're gonna see when you look up the
Sorry.
hill.
Okay,
I don't
wait,
think-
I need to say that again. Say that again. The what is level with the?
The roof of Leahy, I think the grades are, the roof of the Leahy Pavilion,
Is the first floor in building 3.
yeah, is the first floor roughly of
Is the
building
floor
three.
plate of
Is
building
of the residential housing.
And then
On
it
the
goes
first-
up from there,
Yeah,
1.5 more.
yeah.
No, 2.5.
Well,
right,
2.5 more.
right now, when you're walking up the street, do you see Leahy Pavilion?
Yes,
But what
there's
I'm
nothing
saying
in
is
front of
What
it.
you see behind it is the backside of the hospital now, that's what the backside
No,
of
but
building 3 is.
this
I know,
building,
but
this
you-
building will largely shield Leahy, that building will largely
If you're
shield
here?
Leahy. Not if
It's
you're
not gonna
there,
shield-
but from
Yeah.
here and from there, it
Yeah,
shields
but that
it
whole end of
somewhat.
Leahy's gonna stick out just like it does now.
Yeah.
But remember, that's a pretty dramatic slope in front of Leahy too. At this corner, it's already a dramatic slope here.
Mhm.
Look, it's a problematic site. That building is problematic. I don't know how, it's tough to think about how you deal with Leahy in relation to anything else. I worry that it's going to look like an afterthought, like, oh, we just left this behind. We couldn't be bothered. We left this behind.
Yeah, and the thing is that, I mean, my first inclination would have been to try and, maybe with this building, because you have, the drugstore and, what's his name? Telly across the street, and, everything along Chestnut Street, have it respond a little bit more to Leahy Pavilion
mean-
rather.
In orientation, you mean? Or in
Well,
design?
Orientation, design, at least it
Well,
looks so
actually,
that
I was
it,
thinking that too, you had the 3 houses on top residential,
Right.
you have 9D, those 2, and then you have the inside core
Well,
together.
could I build on this point? Because that was
Yeah.
one of the thoughts I had. Could we look at the residential, the commercial buildings again?
That's it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
this is it.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's precisely the problem. In the village,
Mhm.
our commercial buildings look distinct from the residential architecture. Main Street looks like a commercial district.
Yeah.
Big plate glass windows, brick and clapboard. They are recognizably commercial. Along Chestnut, the commercial buildings are recognizably commercial and of their time. They look like 50s and 60s commercial buildings. We don't have suburban looking commercial buildings that take this. To me, this looks very Westchester, because you see a trend in commercial and plaza-like buildings to quote residential architecture and look cute and residential and not commercial. That's not what we have in the village. The commercial buildings we have are recognizable as commercial structures. I think that would help relate, having these buildings look like commercial structures, distinct from the residential structures, would help to relate those buildings both to our complete stock of residential structures in the village, but also particularly to the distinct style of commercial buildings along this strip. That strip is very much of its time, and I feel like we are sort of, these look like ye olde shoppy buildings to me that you would find in, they're lovely buildings. They don't feel like village commercial buildings to me.
But one of the first things I did was I went on the website and I looked at all the the buildings downtown. I mean, and it's not untypical with a lot of others, but I mean, but a lot of them are a lot of town structures are flat roof structures. They go up and they get the big cornices and whatnot. We have a half story. I mean,
Well, but this part of the village isn't that. What you're describing is Main Street. You're right. Parapets, three stories, dominant cornices, very tall windows. That says Main Street. This part of the village says something very different. This part of the village says mid-century car culture. And it says that in a couple of ways. It says it via its design vocabulary. It's low slung. It's long, big windows. It's also setback. Now, I know that there's been great machination over site plan and location of buildings. I think a disservice has been done here in that strict conformance to site configuration, because we don't have the deep commercial setback that exists in the rest of this portion of the village. The orientation of this building, all of the commercial buildings in this area are oriented to the street. This sits offsides. This comes right to the street. Very typical of Main Street, very typical of our residential streets. Not typical of the commercial design in this portion of the village. To me, when I read the guidelines about character and marrying new construction to the character of the neighborhood, that's not achieved with this setback. And so I find this development for that reason, this portion of the development, for that reason, out of character with the commercial area and with the setbacks.
so but I'm not sure that I can change. Can I work with you to get the look that you want? Because I'm not sure I can change the building location.
Well,
Yeah, I
that's
think
a
you
question that's
can.
tough, but I think that you can work with design. I think that you've got lots of flexibility for design, and part of that is achieved by the fact, I think, and again, this is each person's going to give their own view. You've got Leahy as a design cue. Okay, it's not a spectacular building, and I'm not saying copy Leahy, but I'm saying you've got some vocabulary here to work with. You've got long horizontals. You've got a low flat roof that relates to what's around it. You've also got a grade shift that makes these buildings distinct from these buildings locationally. These buildings relate, I think, more to the residential area here and here. These buildings relate to a commercial district here. Yes, there's a residential area here, but
We
you've
don't
got an
care about those
incursion of,
voices.
you've
What?
got, well,
We don't care about
Peter's
the
over
guy
there.
who's
But you've
lives
got
right
an
over here.
incursion, you've already got an incursion of big multifamily stuff over here. So, but if we're introducing new commercial buildings, you've got a commercial vocabulary that exists here and an institutional vocabulary that exists here that you can draw from, that I think makes these distinct as commercial buildings and distinct from the residential. There's a lot of good vocabulary you're pouring in residential. I don't think it belongs on 1 and 2.
But the Leahy Pavilion is there.
Right.
Yeah.
So you
But-
may as
but-
well deal with it.
Well, I'm not so sure, because I mean,
You can't
if
deal
the
with it.
if the Leahy Pavilion is not an attractive building, do we
I'm
take
not
the
saying
elements?
replicate that, no, but I'm saying you've got lines. You've got lines that the way the Leahy Pavilion relates to the commercial buildings on the other side of the street in that it's low slung, it has strong horizontals. I'm not saying you choose any more than that.
Well, excuse me, but.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you have like the M&T Bank, which is a big block. You have the
True.
Nest, which is this
Goofy residential.
contemporary,
Yeah.
residential style thing. I don't think that relating to the 1950s is, I agree with you and I disagree with you. I agree with you in the sense that these don't strike me as commercial buildings. They do strike me as, if you told me that was entirely an apartment building, I would totally believe you. I think that the relationship of the buildings to the road, this not being parallel to a tangent in the road and, just being at a very weird angle to the road, and the other one being quite so close is just, we're accustomed to seeing, and the character here has been, and if you see it in the Nest and you see it in M&T, you also see it in Food Town and the Anatelli Plaza, those because of parking and the other two because of green space. When you enter Cold Spring, the character is you see this green swath and you slowly come down to a more intense area where the buildings are closer once you get to the residential buildings, starting with past M&T. And then you get to the church, etc. I think the thing that bothers me is these buildings don't read as commercial, and they also read as Disney, Williamsburg, someplace else, not Cold Spring. I don't mind the idea that they're not flat roofed. As a matter of fact, I would prefer to see not flat roofed. I like the idea of having a roof line that's
A more
broken up.
animated roof line.
And but the idea of a lot of multi-pane, a lot of shutters on a commercial building, really, and then shutters on windows that are like 3 double hung windows wide and just one little shutter at each time makes no sense. I'd like to see something that is more of its time, not of the 1950s, not of the 1970s, something that is more of its time. I don't care about if it's more modern. There are more modern buildings that can still make reference to historic precedents, historic inspiration. I think if you look at the high school building up at Haldane, it's a modern building. It has a lot of historic antecedents incorporated in it without being a historic pastiche, without being a reproduction.
Yes, and to
without being
clarify,
Williamsburg.
I want to clarify, I agree with you. I'm not saying that I think your building should reproduce what's already there. I don't think they should look like 50s buildings. I don't think they should look like 80s buildings.
And
I
particularly
think they should
50s
look
buildings
like,
that are kind of crappy.
they're kind of crappy.
Yeah.
Although I love the
But they
M&T
should be- I
building.
think they
But
should
they
be
should be
first
of their
to it,
time
also.
and
M&T
look
is
commercial.
mentioned before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the way I see that, I see you got a cluster of 3 buildings here, which are, visually are gonna have to relate to each other. Then you've got the cluster of these buildings here, which are gonna relate to each other. And then you have the single-family residences along Paulding, which relate to each other.
Yeah, you kinda
So
have
I
three
think,
parts, yeah.
I think that kind of, then sort of grounds it in what is there already, and that's where it kind of develops the, makes it appropriate, and you can issue a certificate.
Watch it.
But let me ask this one question, because I do happen to agree with the business about the setback. What is keeping you from moving these buildings back? I mean, I would
Before a zoning?
I would even,
Parking.
well, but if you moved it back and put the parking in front, then at least, well, I mean,
Supposedly you already
How
have
else can
16
you
feet
do
in
it?
front.
What?
You already have 16 feet supposedly in front of this one, so we did move it back this way.
16
But
and
they're
below.
limited on
No,
what,
but I'm
because of the
saying,
way,
you said you moved it back just a little.
Yeah, I think,
Yeah, but
I think
16
it's like
is only-
20-something to the edge of the pavement.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, how much to
But
the
you
end
got a
of the
road
DOT
parking
right
area,
away?
but if you,
Yeah,
Like 4?
yeah, I think it's 5 feet.
5 feet.
It was driven by, they wanted to see 0. They thought it would look good. They said that some of the buildings had 0 setbacks, and we actually requested that it go back at least another 5 feet, so.
Well, zero doesn't fly, because 0 might fly on Main Street, because that's
Mhm.
the way Main Street was built in the 1870s or so.
Right.
But,
there were other buildings that
and
are
we,
already
by the
at
way-
that.
do it on
we
90.
argued that in our initial, when we reviewed the secret document, the EAF, we talked about setback and the character of this portion of the village
Mhm.
having a deeper setback.
And I don't think anybody read
And
it.
Yeah.
so that's been raised and we'll raise it again.
Well,
And
like the Parks House, we had them move theirs up.
and moving the bioretention around is, it's like, it's how your drainage works. The, but I understand the parking could be a problem, and how that's dealt with. But I'd like to see both of those buildings move, well, I'd like to see building 1 move back, I'd like to see building 2,
Orientated.
or, yeah, turned around, rotated so that it's parallel to a tangent in the roadway.
That can't happen according to the zoning.
Well, no, there's quite a bit that can happen according to the zoning, because if you look at the zoning not only says 25 feet and so many degrees, but it also says aesthetic considerations. Aesthetic considerations. Read it again.
Okay, so,
Well, we haven't
That
heard from
was
Peter, though.
Well, that's what I was, basically you guys covered it all. I was gonna say, the gas station, the Dunkin' Donuts, we actually wanted them to keep the building like it was. They actually wanted to do something like this and reinvent it. And we actually wanted them to keep the building the way it was, just for that reason.
all right.
So that it fit in that
Here
character.
you have new buildings, and you can plow new ground. You're not taking an old building and rehabbing it or altering it
We
or
would have building-
adding to it.
We'd have building 2 in the Leahy Pavilion, and then looking over that, we'd have another building 3 that looks like the building in front of it. It would look,
Would look what?
it would just look out of place. The Leahy Pavilion, Gal said, is gonna just,
Yeah,
unless
Well-
we orientate these 3 together, it's gonna look like a mess.
I agree. I think
I think it should be the commercial section, the, senior section,
Senior,
and then the
right.
residential section.
That's a great idea. I mean, that's exactly, I mean, so that gives us something to strive for. That's perfect. That's exactly kind of some of the feedback we're looking for, and we could do that.
Yeah.
And I think that, just sort of building on the comments, a commercial office section should look like a commercial office section, and I think that, I have to commend you as far as, the design of the buildings, that they look nice, but they look residential. I mean, it's.
in Westchester.
Yeah, I think you could look at it multiple ways. And I appreciate the way you're looking at it. Like another way to look at it is that, I don't find the Leahy Pavilion a very attractive building,
Nobody does.
and
Nobody
so
does.
here you're doing a development. So if you tie it all together, mixed use development. I don't think that.
That looks like the big old parking garage left in the center.
Yeah, no, but mixed use development can certainly tie
Yeah.
together, but the idea of kind of breaking the commercial off from the multifamily and then the single family on the side, that's great.
And we have confidence that your buildings 1 and 2 will make the Leahy Pavilion look like it's perfect.
Well,
Can we come to the issue of setback? I mean, I would like to get a better understanding. I recall that reference in the B4A to aesthetic considerations about shifting. I think that we need to better understand that. I don't have the law in front of me here tonight, but to see what flexibility there may be to talk about streetscape in this section and shifting back, reorienting perhaps building 1 in the lots, reorienting this.
Well, let me ask, Matt, where are you as far as the planning board? Because they're the ones who review the
Right.
site, right?
The planning board has, as far as they're concerned, they've locked in the design. Basically, we went to them about 2 times, tweaked some things, proved that we were within the limits of shifts, and they've asked us to fully develop the engineered drawings. So we're basically working with this.
But they paused and referred it to us, and now they're waiting for comment from us via
Well,
this
they need a
process.
certificate of appropriateness review.
And so,
And I think the way we look at it, I'd have to, talk with Paul and people, that we know, but as we understood it, the altering, matter of fact, I think this came up at the last meeting. Yeah, we have the ability to alter the locations. We don't have to alter the locations. So,
We're gonna need advice of counsel
Yeah.
on what we can do, what we're allowed to do and what we're not. So we can't answer that question tonight, but we will give you an answer.
but just know, I think you've heard from at least 3 of us, potentially 4, that's a concern for us, how the streetscape relates to what's around.
I think that's much more important, actually, than the inside stuff, because that's what everyone's gonna see when they drive into town.
I wouldn't say that it's more important, I would say it is equally important. the whole site's important, but yes, you're right.
You're
You're,
gonna
no,
see
you're
this,
right, that
and
you're,
then blow
you're, the
up.
public's experience of
Maybe
this
they
site
think
is
they
gonna
do.
be mostly here, you're right.
Maybe they think they do.
I don't think so, no, based on the house.
Did you wanna, we cut you off before you got to the three houses.
Oh, no, you know, we were just discussing, we're developing some preliminary sketches that, were in similar character to the rest of these buildings, but the comment of maybe those being similar in character to the buildings across the street, make a certain amount of sense. I mean,
Not
it's a
replicate.
beautiful building across the street, if,
Two
it's too bad there's so many
beautiful buildings
trees,
across the
you can't appreciate it as much as you could, but it's a beautiful building.
But again, not a replica of what's.
Not a replica, yeah, I know.
The thing that gives me pause here, can you talk about the depth on the garage compared to the plane, the primary plane on the house? This is a big garage for the village.
Yeah, we've actually changed these a little bit. These were slid up, so there's actually let's say a jog of 5 to 6 feet behind. This is shifted back, so you see a jog of 5 feet from the face of the building to the face of the garage.
So deeper than it appears here.
Yes, it's not flush at all.
It's an
And then we
elevation.
hope to put a deck
It's
in
not
the
deeper,
back.
it's the other way. It's
More
closer to the
forward.
road. Yeah, it's moved forward.
Right, but it's still deeper than the face of the building.
Yeah.
We still have it, it's still set back.
It's a very small footprint for a garage.
Yeah, it's still proportionally a lot of garage for a village house.
But
I'm wondering about, but you're limited, you couldn't turn it except on the outside. You could do it on 3.
Well,
Maybe not.
I think that Ray has, our feedback as far as what we think would work well, and so let him go back and take a look and.
Well, I'm the only one raising a concern about the garage. Does anybody else have a concern about the garage?
Well, no, I have to agree with you that, historically and throughout most of the village, the garage was really a stable in the back, and
Separate
so.
structure, yeah. Even to the 50s.
Right. But, and I think that nowadays, nowadays the garage would be a forward, you pull your car in and so on. So as long as it's pushed back from the front facade, I think that then at least it's capturing the
It's substantially, pulled back. I mean, I think that this footprint has slid forward a little bit, but it's substantially back.
Well, if that, I mean, I don't know which is more, this is probably more to scale than what we're seeing on the lot.
No, they're both the
Lines,
scale
right?
for the
Because,
scale that
because
they're
it,
at.
maybe it's the quality of this drawing, that the garage looks so large by comparison. It seems proportionally smaller there. Do we have a scale?
Well,
Almost about half the width of the house.
I think he's locked in anyway,
Yeah.
his setbacks.
I mean, I think we've got the ability to make this smaller. So if the house were a couple of feet smaller, so you could get a small 2-car garage, that's what we're looking at.
Well,
Because other than that, it's a 1-car garage.
well, on the other hand, on Grove Court, Grove Court houses are not, they are atypical of the village entirely, and they're very close neighbors. Right, they're newer construction like this.
And they all have
So I could
garages
buy the
entered from
argument
side.
that these new houses relate to the Grove Court more than they are intended to relate to the Paulding piece.
So there seems to be some,
I don't feel super
Discrepancies,
strongly
I'm
right
yeah.
now.
yeah.
I don't feel super strongly about it right now. That's my initial reaction, but I also think the Grove Court buildings aren't, I see them as being very out of character of the village too, but these relate to those.
But
So-
I thought it was a great comment, if they take on some character from across the street, I mean, you're going down that street and it's
Right.
cohesive, yeah.
Right.
Oh,
That's our major
Al's
road.
point, you mean?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Anybody have any other comments or at least feedback at this particular point? All right, so, when do you want to schedule the next workshop?
We'd like to try and come in as much as we can. I don't know if we can come in during your normal meeting, early or late and still have workshops with you, so we're not waiting a month,
Next,
a month.
so far, I mean, the deadline is next Friday, but so far, the November agenda is light. And we have a workshop on the 5th for
Daily.
Garden Street for Daily.
Well, and we have a joint meeting
And we have a
next
joint
week,
meeting on the 29th.
and
But that's not
gonna
enough
go
time
for
for
a
you to
while.
do what you need to do anyway. I'm just saying, if we wanted to do it on the night of a regular session, we could finish the regular meeting and then do workshop if if it continues to be as light as it seems it's going to be right now. The people have another week to make the
All
deadline.
right, you want to shoot for the, on the meeting, the night of the meeting?
What night is that, the 5th?
That's
Yeah,
12th. No, the 5th is a
12th,
workshop.
12th,
I mean-
that's right.
I don't know
Well, the
how long
5th
the
is a
daily thing is
workshop,
gonna
but
go
then-
on anyway. The daily workshop. That's a small, that's the one that they, when they started researching the building to begin work, they found that there's a discrepancy between what was permitted and what was built.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanna go
This
through,
is
Put the
19
windows
Garden?
in?
This is 19 Garden?
it's 19 Garden Street.
Yeah.
Yes. So, brief aside, so we can figure out if we have time to do too. The property owner hired an architect to design an addition. When the architect reviewed the building inspector's files, this is from ages ago, it's not a current, ages ago. What was approved by this board and the zoning board, and what was
Bill,
the work for which a building permit was issued all match. What was built and what received a certificate of occupancy from that same building inspector do not match. So they want to rectify the record and establish what's there, have us look at what was built, and then go on to look at
what they
their
wanna
new
build.
construction. Yes, the proposed new construction. They want to put a pin in the fact that things were built before they were. Yeah. So I don't know how complicated that will be, but that's on the 5th.
Well,
And we're gonna have a
fifth-
small conference room for that too, because
yeah.
planning isn't here.
On the 5th, you have something
The 5th of
already?
the-
Oh, well then,
Planning board.
so scrap it up. You're gonna be in this room, we're gonna be in that room.
All right.
So then it has to
that-
be the 12th.
The Ray can come in and see you. That's not a problem. Can you get, how much can you get done for, when does he have to have it, everything?
But we
in
meet
writing?
again the next week. We meet the 12th for our regular meeting. And you
So
could
do-
be at the end of
yeah,
that one, and that
that's
way you
fine.
can hear both.
That's better.
Okay.
12. What do you think?
Yeah,
No, I mean, if it were possible, I can't respond to everything, but if whether it's the houses or the commercial buildings, if I had something substantial to give you and I knew that, could I let you know and discuss it on the 5th?
Yeah, we just have to have it early enough that the public,
yeah.
Oh, it's a
Review
public
it.
hearing, okay.
well, you're not gonna have a public hearing, but
Right,
we
it's
need
a
to
work
provide
session.
materials that'll be reviewed, that will be discussed that night, 10 days prior.
10
Yeah,
days.
okay.
10 days would be like middle of next week.
Well, no, you've got,
Well, no,
The
I mean,
third.
the notice doesn't go out as far as notification
next-
a week ahead of
next
time.
Monday.
So,
That gives you the rest of this week and the rest of next week. And it doesn't have to be, what you turn in doesn't have to be absolutely complete. But if you can give us something to make available that indicates what your presentation will be.
Yeah, I mean, these are pretty complete drawings, and I'd like to
Plus-
say, it's sketchy your stuff, even there's a lot of sketches,
Okay,
And
are
P.S.
better than knocking yourself out and doing something
So that would
that
be
looks
what,
very
the
rendered.
26th would be the deadline for the
You're on the
submission?
umbrella, can you?
and
shut
Ray,
that?
I bring it here.
okay.
Yeah.
But the other thing is,
You're on
we
my
will
umbrella,
come
can you
out of
shovel
regular
and weed that
session
to the chair, so I
and
can
then
roll
have a
it all down?
workshop. And the degree of completeness
Thank
for a
you.
workshop, the requirement for completeness is not the same.
Yeah.
So whatever you've got, you show up with on that night.
Yeah, and so we'll do more looser sketches and more of it, so we can,
Yeah,
Unless
because
we find more
the whole
breaks,
idea
yeah.
is really to exchange ideas
Yes.
and sort of get to a consensus, and then once we all agree on the direction to go, then that's when you start working up the sketches sort of to this level.
okay.
But to have it in 10 days.
No,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm thinking about a regular session. If it's a
Oh.
workshop session, it's not.
A week before?
Don't fret. I mean, as early as you can get it, right? As early as you can get it in to Mary,
Okay.
the better, because then the public can see them. And you can send in partial, and then the workshop night bring the rest. It's not like you're trying to complete an application for formal review.
That's good, thank you.
Okay.
But thank you, that feedback's helpful, I mean, it's a good concept to work with.
Well, thank you for the effort.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.